Hi, happy Friday. I'm Jennifer from the Somerset County Family Community Health Science Department, and today we're talking about food waste, some hacks and tips that you can use at home to preserve food and increase the longevity and really make an impact on not just the environment but also your finances. Now, just some shocking statistics to share with you. 40% of food waste comes from households. Okay, not big corporations, not big restaurants, 40%, so almost half come from our residential homes. And in 1 month, a family of 4 wastes about 24 pounds of fresh produce. So that's what we're gonna highlight today, how you can save your fresh produce, but 24 pounds of produce is wasted in a month in one family. 22 pounds of milk, 10 pounds of meat and fish, and 18.5 pounds of grains. It's really an issue. And the sad part is that when families were surveyed, 70% of the food that was wasted was edible. And the reason why it was wasted, it was because they didn't like leftovers, they didn't want to use it. Not that it was bad food, 70% was edible. So I'm gonna share some tips today, so hopefully you can increase the use of your food and reduce that food waste. So let's take a look at grains, right? How many of us, right, by the end of the week, we might have some heels of bread, some slices, that we never got to, we don't think it's really fresh, or we're not gonna eat those pieces. Don't throw them away. You can actually just pop them into a food processor, ground them down, and make homemade breadcrumbs. You can save them in a mason jar or a Ziploc bag. Plain, you can add some spices that you have. If you have some herbs in your refrigerator that are maybe starting to go, throw them in there. Throw some parsley or whatever you have, and use the stems of it too. So turn these into breadcrumbs. Because it costs a lot of money to buy breadcrumbs, right? So that's just one way you can do it. And if you have an overabundance of bread, one of my daughter's favorite things to eat is French toast. And to be honest, when you are making French toast, you don't want the freshest bread. You want a little bit of bread that's starting to harden and that really soaks up the milk and the eggs. So French toast, homemade French toast is another great thing to do. Let's talk about grains. Now, so many times we make grains, we'll have rice or quinoa or some kind of grains left over. I just pulled this from my refrigerator, so you can see I have a container of rice. And I love these containers that I use. I have some that are PBA safe plastic and some that are clear glass, so that I can see what's in there and I know what is in those containers. So what are some things that we can do with leftover rice? We can make homemade fried rice. And I'll share a lot of these recipes in the comments below after the live. But you could just heat up some olive oil or avocado oil, throw in whatever vegetables you have. Maybe you have some scallions or you have some onions left over. Some recipes will call for a half of an onion. So then you have that other half sitting in your refrigerator and you're like, what should I do with it? Well, chop it up in one of your dishes or casseroles that you're making. So you can take that half of onion, chop it up and saute it in oil, maybe with some leftover peppers that you might have or carrots. Add your rice. Add 1 or 2 eggs, scramble that in, maybe a dash of soy sauce, and you have homemade fried rice. If you go back to our video library, September of 2022, I shared a great recipe for air fryer arancini, which are rice balls. So if you have leftover rice, that's a really fun thing that you can make for the next day, for lunch or for an appetizer, and it's right in the air fryer, so it's a healthy version. You're not using the oil. Another thing you can do are grain bowls. If you have leftover brown rice or quinoa, why not have that for breakfast, right? We have oatmeal all the time for breakfast. You're just warming up your quinoa or your brown rice in a bowl with a little bit of milk of your choice, maybe some cinnamon, maybe some sliced almonds, some blueberries, pop it in the microwave, and you have a warm grain, delicious, healthy, quick breakfast. And you're using what's in your refrigerator. Okay, so now let's talk about this produce that we're all wasting. So first of all, some produce you can bring back to life. My favorite hack is bringing celery back to life. All right, give me a thumbs up in the comments if you have celery in your refrigerator that is limp. and soft and limp celery. Don't throw it in the trash. Take that celery, put it in a tall glass of water, put it in your refrigerator. By the end of the day or the next day, that celery will be strong and tall and crunchy again. My favorite hack for celery. Okay, let's talk about broccoli. All right, so if you're cooking broccoli florets, a very healthy thing to have for dinner. We chop off the florets. How many of us are tossing the stems? Huge contributor to food waste. You can use the stems. Check the recipes in the comments for a broccoli stem slaw. So it's like a coleslaw using the stems of the broccoli, so you don't have to throw that out again. Peppers. And this is something that I made last night. I had a few of these great bell peppers, but if you can see really closely, they're starting to get wrinkled. So I know my family would not want this cut up and eaten raw with a dip. They won't do that. Plus it's a little soft, so it does lose its crunch. But it's not waste. These are perfect for sauteing. So last night I had steak strips and I sauteed onions and the peppers that were getting a little soft. It was delicious. Right? No one's gonna know that the peppers were a little wrinkly. Same goes for cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes can get wrinkly really fast. They are so sweet and flavorful if you saute them or put them in a sheet pan and roast them in your oven. The natural juices will start to bubble over, and that is a great addition to a pasta dish, a side over chicken with some fresh herbs. So again, use those cherry tomatoes, and if they're getting wrinkly, just saute them or roast them. Now bananas, right? Bananas go bad so fast. So we all have bananas that start to go bad. I know no one in my family would eat this. My son likes them really, really, really pre-ripe. And sometimes we get tired of making banana bread or we don't have time to do that. So if I don't have time to make something with my brown bananas, I will peel it and just put it in a Ziploc bag and toss it in the freezer. My top shelf of my freezer is Ziploc bags full of fruit for smoothies. All right, these soft bananas are perfect for smoothies. If I have leftover pineapple or mangoes or raspberries that are starting to go and people may not eat it, I might have too much of it, I will put it in a Ziploc bag and it's labeled for my smoothies, which is really a go-to. The other one I love to freeze are blueberries. Blueberries will be coming into season really soon, and you'll see in the grocery store, they'll be selling them by the case. Buy them and freeze them. I freeze them in the smaller snack size, and I use them in my blueberries. So even in the winter time, we have fresh blueberries for our pancakes. Love doing that. What other tips? The broccoli slaw, wanted to just make sure I hit all of that with you. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mention is meal planning. So many times we will waste food because we're in a hurry, but if you can map out your plan for the week of what you're making and taking a look at the inventory that you already have, use the inventory that you have in your refrigerator, freezer, and pantry so that you're not buying more of it. If you have an abundance of broccoli, roast them, make the broccoli slaw. Another thing that you can do with some of the scraps is save it in a Ziploc bag like this. And you can put it in the freezer for several months, just label it vegetable scraps, and you can make homemade veggie stock, all right? Then you throw your scraps in boiling water, let that simmer for a while. All those nutrients are gonna get drawn out of the vegetable scraps into the broth, and it's going to be a delicious thing to have in your refrigerator for soups. The other thing about the scraps that I wanna mention is composting. Some people have compost, some people want to do that, and it's actually pretty simple to learn about. In the comments, there will be a link to a Rutgers fact sheet on the basic information on composting from our extension. So take that, read that sheet. I'll also post the link to our Master Gardeners hotline. So if you do have a home garden and you have questions about gardening or composting, you can call the volunteers and they will give you some great advice and tips as well. So I hope you will take these tips. I hope you will use them in your home. not just, you know, over the weekend, but make it part of your life so that you can reduce the food waste, help the environment, help the impact on all the resources that we're using. The climate change is a huge issue with the greenhouse gas emissions. So help the environment and help your finances, because food costs are on the rise. And I don't know if I shared that with you. $161 billion were lost in food waste by families in 2010. $161 billion lost from food waste. So don't waste your food. Have a great weekend.